Well, howdy there, neighbor. This is Mr. Golden, inviting you to join me and take a look at my controllers. So I've been personally DJing with the X1 for the past at least year and a half. These guys are really good for deck controllers. You've got one dedicated deck on one side and the other on the other side, A, B, and if you have two, C, D. This is particularly good if you like to mix with a mixer, which I do, and then you run all four of those decks onto the mixer, so you've got sort of a dedicated hardware setup, and you can kind of forget about this beastly demon over here, the computer, which I think we'd all like to throw against the wall if we could. So the new X1, is it better than the original one? We'll tell you that and more in this video.
And here we go.
So the new X1, now you'll see that it's actually been divided in two sections. So if you'll remember, this is one deck and this is the other deck. So this touch strip can be divided into controlling the A deck or the B deck. You can also, by holding down in the center, switch that so you have the entire touch strip on one deck. They lost one of the encoders, and instead what you have is a central browse knob. So you go through your list. One cool thing is that these browse knobs are actually touch sensitive. So when you touch it, you notice that my screen opened up and now I can go through my list, and when I let go, it snaps back open. Pretty cool. So one thing I liked about the X1 that is gone on the X1 Mark II is that you had dedicated browse load encoders for each side. So for me, when I'm thinking about loading a song in a deck, I want to go to that deck, browse through the list, and load the song. I found this to be a really intuitive workflow. Now I've got this one single browse knob, and then I have to think about what deck I want to go into. So it sort of turns that into a two-step process. What you get in exchange, of course, is this nice big touch strip. Now the touch strip does more than just pitch bend and seek needle drop, as we see here. You can actually assign it to a lot of different things. So if I drop a track on deck C and we want to put some effects on this beat, we'd go ahead and route this effects unit, turn on the effects, and rock it out. But let's say you wanted to actually use the touch strip to do that. You can. All you do is hold down the center and press the effect that you want to control. It blinks to tell you you're controlling that effect. And now I can turn on the effect. So it actually tracks two fingers. You can do little value rolls. And not only can you assign the touch strip to the effects, you can also assign it to things like flux. So you can do little flux rolls as well, just like on the Traktor iPad edition. So once again, let's roll that beat. We're going to hold down the center and assign it to the loop. So really, this is kind of just like the Beatmasher, but it drops loops instead of effects, so you don't use up an effects slot on that. To get out of it, you just press the loop encoder and you're back into the normal functionality, which is needle drop or pitch bend. Now let's talk about pitch bend for a little moment, because that was a big change here and it's sort of a big UX decision. Previously, pitch bending was on two buttons, and you also had on the shift layer two dedicated buttons for tempo adjust. So now instead of having two buttons where you push and pull the pitch, you've got one single strip where you move the phase left or right. So this matches really well with the Traktor concept of phase adjustments and sort of moving one song's phase against the other, and you can drag it and pull it, but it's no longer pushing and pulling. I personally would probably like it a lot better if these were different regions and I could use them like buttons, pushing and pulling the beat. If you look at the units side by side, you're going to notice that the new X1 is a lot cleaner. They've taken away all these labels that used to be here, and they've also cleaned up the buttons a little bit. One change that I really like is that they've made the cue and play buttons side by side instead of above each other, and they've made them a lot bigger. Another thing a lot of you are going to really like is that they brought the cue points to the front. It used to be that you had to press a cue point button and then you would get all 8. Now you've got 4 dedicated cue point buttons at the top. One of the biggest upgrades that you're going to find are these blinking loop indicators, which show me what loop length is currently engaged and whether or not it's off or on. This is really handy. Again, we're talking about focusing on the controllers and the hardware and not getting stuck in the computer land. So having that information available to me on the controller is a big thing. And it was missing on the X1 Mark I. The X1 Mark II is plug and play compatible with Traktor, so you just plug it in and it works. There's actually a dedicated pane in here where you can adjust some of the settings, including how bright the LEDs are. You can do things like adjust the bend sensitivity, the seek sensitivity. One of the things I definitely do not like is some of the implementations of the touch strip. While this touch strip is really powerful and fun to map, so you can map not only the touch, but also the move. We're also talking to NI about being able to map whether or not you have 1 finger or 2 fingers. Really cool. That functionality does exist in the controller, although it's not revealed in the mapping editor yet. This kind of stuff is a lot of fun, but the default behavior in terms of how it works with the pitch bending, personally, I prefer the buttons. So I'll probably be remapping these buttons here, like the 3 and 4 cue points, to something like pitch bend and making this guy dedicated to effects or some other functionality. But that's the beauty of Traktor. You can go in and take a controller like this and very easily modify it for your own personal taste and make it whatever you want to make it. Now the big question, if I have the X1, should I upgrade to the Mark II? It's hard to say. For me personally, I'm probably going to stick with the original because I had invested so much time on mappings that relied on this 2x2 formation of the encoders. I really like having 2 encoders dedicated per deck. It made my mapping super intuitive. It's a hard choice though because these new buttons are a lot better, the touch strip is great for effects, and overall the controller looks a lot cleaner. This controller admittedly was a bit busy with all this writing underneath the buttons and a ton of writing on top of the buttons themselves. This new X1 Mark II looks really sexy and it looks very clean. It's, like I said, a great visual update. In terms of functionality though, I'm not sure you get a lot of extra stuff. The touch-sensitive encoders are amazing for mapping purposes. You can map this touch to all kinds of cool things, like maybe you turn on an effect, you change the effect, and then you go ahead and step through different presets. Whatever your imagination can come up with, I'm sure you can create it with the touch sensitivity here, as well as the touch sensitivity here. So it's up to you. I think these are both great controllers. Overall, I'd give this a solid 8 out of 10 in terms of an update from the X1 Mark I. I hope that they'll maybe readdress how they do the pitch bending, so it's a little bit more musical and intuitive for us old school DJs who still like the feeling of pushing and pulling a record and adjusting 2 songs in relationship to each other. So that pretty much wraps it up. Thanks to you guys, as usual, for all your support and help on the blog. Check us out at djtechtools.com for more tips, tricks, and reviews on digital DJ gear around the world.